In this lecture dealing with comparative religions, we now come to the subject of Hinduism. Now, we all tend to assume that Hinduism is the faith of Mother India. And immediately we begin to think of Indian costumes, ladies dressed in flowing robes, and the fakir or holy men, the gurus that have come to this country. But in reality, Hinduism actually began in Europe. There was a tribe called the Aryans who migrated out of Europe into northern India in successive waves of conquest from 1500 BC to 500 BC. These white-skinned individuals called themselves the Brahmins or the Aryans. Now, the Brahmins today in northern India, who were light-skinned Indians, trace their spiritual and genetic roots back to this mysterious tribe of Europeans called the Aryans. Now, some of you may remember the word Aryan from its use by Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. We must remember that the cult of Nazism, as developed by Adolf Hitler, was a Hindu cult. It was the attempt to claim that the blonde, blue-eyed, fair-skinned Germans were the true Aryans who were the progenitors of Hinduism. This is why Nazism chose the Hindu religious symbol of the swastika as its own symbol. Now, some people have tried to blame Christianity for the atrocities of Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and Dachau. And they said, well, look what the Christians did during World War II. Look at these Christian Nazis. When in reality, they were Hindus. And they marched under a Hindu symbol, and they claimed to be the Aryans. And Adolf Hitler and his ghoulish band of followers stated that once they had finished obliterating Jewry, they were going to destroy the Christian church, all in the name of reestablishing the original Aryan religion which captured the hearts of the Indian people. Now, the Indo-European people called the Aryans were originally fire worshippers. That is, they believed that fire was deity, was divine, and ultimately all things would be destroyed in fire, and this sometimes was called the dance of Siva or Shiva. Because they were fire worshippers, they believed in cremation. They did not believe in burying their dead. And they also believed that, as we shall see later on, the widow should jump into the fires of her husband's funeral pyre or be thrown in there in order to be consumed by the fire. They are also the ones who invented the theory of soul transmigration, which we sometimes call reincarnation here in the West. They taught that at death you do not go to heaven or to hell, but you get recycled into another physical body. Now, that body could be an insect, could be a plant, could be an animal, could be a human being, and what kind of body you got on the next go-around was determined by your karma, and karma was determined by your good and bad deeds in your previous life. Now, this immediately brings up a point concerning historic Hinduism that they have never been able to surmount. There is within Hinduism from the very beginning a very blatant form of racism. If in your next reincarnation you end up as a white-skinned Brahmin, then you must have had good karma. If you end up as a poor black, you must have had bad karma. The whiter your skin, the better the karma. The blacker your skin, the worse the karma. So the highest rebirth you could possibly wish for is to be born as one of the pale-skinned Brahmins who, by virtue of their color, were considered the higher class. Thus, in Hinduism, You are judged by the color of your skin and not by the content of your character, skills, or talents. The darker your skin, the lower your caste and rank in Hindu society. The whiter your skin, the higher your caste and rank. The Brahmins prided themselves on their light-colored skin while despising the darker-skinned people of the Indian subcontinent as being subhuman. And they refer to them as the untouchables. That is, it was not even permitted to touch these darker-skinned Indians. This explains why the Hindu gurus traveled to the West looking for converts. You had as far back as the 19th century Chicago World's Fair when an Indian guru showed up and became influential, and ultimately his influence could be felt in Unity School of Religion, Science of the Mind, Theosophy, Christian Science. Even to this day, his teachings are influential. And then you also have Meher Baba, you have the Divine Light Mission, you have Rajneesh, and you have a host of other gurus who have traveled to Europe and the United States looking for converts. Question: why do we never read of these Indian gurus making their way to Black Africa? Why aren't they there along the Zambezi seeking to gain converts to Buddhism, to Hinduism? The answer is quite simple. They look upon the darker-skinned races as being born that way as a punishment for the evil that they did in a previous life. Thus, while Hindu gurus are more than willing to travel to the West to convert rich white Europeans to Hinduism, they never bother to travel to the ghettos. They never bother to travel to Africa. They actually don't want black people whose skin color is an indication of bad karma. As long as they can sucker rich Westerners into giving them their money by telling them money is evil, so give it all to me, and pathetically they hand it over. Why do they have any need for darker-skinned people? This can be documented from many of the statements made by the gurus even in this country. When Rajneesh was interviewed on television, he was asked, "What are you doing for the poor?" His response was, "Let the Christians take care of the poor. I'm here to help the rich."